Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the properties of waves. We all know that all types of waves has four basic properties. The first one, the amplitude, the wavelength, frequency, and the last but not least, speed. Let's now talk about each one in details. You have the first one, the amplitude. Amplitude is known as its definition is the maximum distance that the particles of the medium carrying the wave move away from their rest positions. So, if you were talking about the amplitude of the transverse wave, it will be the maximum distance or the distance from this rest position to the crest. Then you have the distance from this rest position to the trough. Okay, but if you were talking about the amplitude of the longitudinal wave, it will measure of how compressed or rarefied the medium can become. As you can see in this figure, the amplitude will be from the distance from the beginning of this compression to the ending of the compression. This is the amplitude. Then, from the starting of the distance from this starting of this rarefaction to the end of the rarefaction. This is also an amplitude, and so on. The second one will be the wavelength. Wavelength is a distance between two corresponding parts of a wave. If you were talking about the wavelength of a transverse wave, it will be from crest to crest, or from the trough to trough. But if you were talking about the wavelength of a longitudinal wave, it will be from this compression to this compression, or from this rarefaction to this rarefaction. And because the wavelength is a distance, that's why it will be measured by meter or centimeter, because it's a distance. Then you have the third one, which is the frequency. And the frequency is a number of complete waves that pass a given point in a certain amount of time. And the unit that we measure the frequency is called hertz, or we can say Hz. For example, if you have a rope and you started moving it from the end very quickly, the frequency will increase, so you're increasing the frequency. As a result, you can see here the distance from this crest to this crest is very short distance, so the wavelength decreases. So in here figure we can say as the frequency increase, the wavelength will decrease. But in here we can see that there's many distance. So if you take the rope and you start moving it slowly, so the frequency will decrease. As you can see here, the distance from this crest to this crest is very high, so it's very large, so the wavelength increase. So you can say in this figure that as the frequency decrease, the wavelength increase. The last one, which is the speed. Speed is it's how far the wave travels in a given length of time. For example, if you have the lightning and if it was a stormy day and you can hear the lightning and you can see the lightning and hear the thunder, but you always will hear the lightning before you hear the thunder, because the lightning because the light waves travel much faster than the sound waves, so that by millions of times. So that's why we see the lightning before we hear the thunder. But if we want to measure the speed, we say speed equals wavelength times frequency. But if you want to find the frequency, we can say the frequency equal speed over wavelength. But if you want to find the wavelength, we can say wavelength equals speed over frequency, or we can say speed divided frequency. The physicians follow, as you can see here, triangle. You can say here, you can put here the speed, the wavelength, and the frequency here. So if we say want to know what is the speed, so speed equal wavelength times frequency. But if you want to find the wavelength, we can say speed divided frequency. If you want to find the frequency, speed divide wavelength. Okay, Let's back here and give it an example. Here, if he said for me, if a wave frequency, is 2 hertz and its wavelength is 4 meters, what is the speed of the wave? So we all know that speed, so we know the speed here. So we all know that speed equals frequency times wavelength. Yeah. Okay, so speed equals 2, which is the frequency, times 4, which is the wavelength. That if we multiply them, it will give us 8 meters per second. So speed is 8 meters per second. Thanks for listening. That was by Batool Grade 8.